organizations like NASA, work with organizations like Genes in Space, to be able to develop these avenues and opportunities for students to relate to these words so that when they encounter them outside, they're no longer asking that question of, why do I care about this? What is the purpose of learning about this in school? Now, I think there is, unfortunately, a very clear path of why we need things like genetics, but I think using something like space to open that up to students, there's already so much wonder and excitement and those sort of emotional things that we all understand, that idea of exploration when we think about space. I think that using tools like the ISS, using tools like space education are a great way to open up those other fields, to open up biology, chemistry, genetics to those students. And so I really think that being able to talk with people about this is what I'm passionate about. I love just chatting with people about science. And I think bringing that to the forefront through these different avenues has really sort of driven me over the past few years.
Capitalize on that fascination that space travel already brings to the table.
Yes,
absolutely. Ted, your passion, I know you're a driven man as well too. What kind of fuels you, motivates you as you continue to do your work?
Oh my goodness. Well, too much to talk about really here, other than to say that 1969, right? Little 6-year-old kid sitting in front of that big black and white console TV, right? They're going to the moon. And realizing that was coming again, right? We got the Artemis programs happening and whatnot. And also realizing that, well, as my sons are getting older, they're men now, that our education system probably needed a little disruption. Now, my background actually isn't science, it isn't engineering, and pedagogically, I can't hold a candle to any educator that's out here, really, that's even not in the room. But it was really more about how might we use art or the creativity that we all have inside us innately and transform that into wonder, into curiosity, and then kind of get out of the way as fast as we can. So that's what really kind of drives me. And honestly, I kind of get myself in trouble. And you probably haven't read Tom Sawyer in a while, but if you recall that one part where his aunt makes him go out and paint the fence, that's pretty much all I'm doing right now. We've got that 30-yard board fence 9 feet tall, and I've got some brushes and I need some help.
Absolutely. Dr. Jeanette Epps, I could have sat here and read your resume off for days and days, right? A lot of different areas that you focused on, a lot of amazing accomplishments, and it has to take a driven personality to continue to make change and continue to propel yourself forward. Tell us a little bit about what kind of fuels you.
Well, my passion for science started probably when I was 9 years old. My twin sister and I, we loved anything to do with science. I mean, absolutely anything. And it's kind of interesting, or weird, I should say. My parents, neither of them were engineers. They only had high school education. But my parents really kind of encouraged us, regardless of whether or not they thought we could do it or didn't think we could do it. And they never said, well, you can't do this because you're a girl, you can't do this because you're brown. They just encouraged everything that we wanted to do and kind of fueled that curiosity. And I think I've kept that curiosity throughout my career. And it wasn't just, I wasn't interested specifically in space, but it was just science as a whole, because it's all related. I mean, physics is really biology, chemistry, everything rolled in one. Engineering really is just applied physics. So my career kind of helped me also to kind of maintain that curiosity, learn a little bit about nuclear weapons, learn a little bit about rockets in general, learn about helicopters, fixed-wing aircraft, UAVs, you name it. I had the opportunity to just keep fueling that curiosity, and I think that fueling that kind of also caused my passion to grow as well. But in this passion for science, I kind of wanted to pass this on to my nieces and my nephews, but then doing a lot of talks and meeting all these different students, and realizing that there's not just the need to get them interested, but how do you convince them that this is for you and that it is accessible to you? And so that's another thing that kind of fuels my passion, in that, you know, through space, you can inspire a generation, as with Ted watching the launch, the first Apollo launch. You know, that kind of fueled a generation. How do we re-engage students and get that passion back? So that we'll have, in this country, more students wanting to go into engineering, mathematics, technology, just get involved and help propel not just this country, but the world to the moon, stay on the moon, then go further to Mars. So there's that curiosity and that love for science in general. I want to pass that on to every student that I meet so that they can get involved and really, really help us sustain living on the moon. How do we do that? Through genetics. How do we do that and get our bodies more prepared to stay on the moon for longer than 28 days? So there's a lot of work out there to do. And, as kids become more and more curious, they'll learn that they know so little. And that's what I've learned in my career, is that the more I knew I didn't know. So there's a lot more work out there for us.
Absolutely. Dr. Brown, you have a unique mixture of, obviously STEM outreach work and policy as well too, which is obviously, they both need each other, right, to be able to really drive change. What continues to motivate you as you step forward in your work?
I think I'm motivated by the possibilities. And so I grew up in New York City in a very multicultural environment. So this was, I'm going to date myself, back in the 70s, and had the privilege of being enrolled in a gifted program. And so back then they didn't do like just pull-outs, but like we were just a cohort of kids from across the city, I think I started in 2nd grade, and we went all the way in school together through 8th grade, up until high school. And we just had fun. We did like Olympics of the Mind, we did science fair, we just did all the things our teachers told us to do because we were kids and that's all we knew. And so I didn't have this idea of low expectations, right? I just rose to and to do the best I could do, as again our teachers asked us to do, and we just enjoyed it. And so I didn't grow up with this notion of who can't and who shouldn't, who can. I just did the work, right? And it's a lot easier than I'm saying. But then I went to the Bronx High School of Science, where I admittedly was not the best student. I was also just a high school kid, trying to have fun. But there I attended a program at the Coast Guard Academy, and that's when I learned about engineering. And for a minute, I thought I was going to join the Coast Guard Academy until I learned that you have to actually like jump into water and save people. Like you have to do stuff in the water. I can't swim. So that was the end of that was the beginning and end of that, because you got to swim to do that. And I learned last year, so I shouldn't say that anymore. Learned last year how to swim. Literally taking me my whole life. But then I went to North Carolina A&T State University, so I went to an HBCU, and it was really the first time where I got to just be a student. And I was an electrical engineering major. I didn't have to worry about being, the black this kind of student or the black that kind of student. I just got to be a student and learn, and that is where I fell in love with physics, right? I got to take all the math courses. So everything just came together. It took a while, right? Everything came together when I was in college. And as I transitioned into industry, I worked in the manufacturing sector, right? So I worked in manufacturing for a while, and then became more aware of who was there and who wasn't there in a way that I hadn't before. And then went to graduate school and really started to focus on that. And so my passion is really about, similar to kind of how Ted said, making time and space for other people to be who they want to be. And then it's, moving out of the way, right? And so that's the work that I've been doing in nonprofit and in the policy world. And so I was in the administration during the Obama years, but I'm back now doing the similar kind of work. And now I have an opportunity to do this for the space industry and the space sector specifically.
Nice.
Wow.
Awesome.
Hey, Maynard, if I can, I have to ask you also, but you and Alex have a lot in common as far as taking media and being able to transcend and communicate. You can tell us about what you do too. I mean, I really enjoy your.
Switch roles. We
Well,
can...
no. I just go. You're up here. I just want to make sure that we know what's going on, right? So.
No, absolutely. And much in line with what everybody talked about here. Obviously we talked about passion and purpose, but another theme that we also mentioned is curiosity. And a lot of us are here because we're curious about the future of space travel, space exploration, right? What we can do with this new technology. And that's what drives me is curiosity. I was saying that I do in all of my social media, curiosity is nature's Ph.D. And I've been able to do so many of the things I do with my platform because I've been curious, I've asked questions, I've been willing to step outside the box and try to discover new things. You talked about swimming and everything. I learned to swim last year as well and got scuba certified at the beginning of this year, because I wanted to do more marine biology studies in the overall STEM work that I do. So for me, any challenge that comes about, I ask questions. I try to see more, you know. I try to talk to people, talk to experts who are in these fields, right? And I learn by interacting, and I learn by interviewing and doing all these different things that I do on my platform. And I think it's really important for students especially to know that, right? Because a lot of times we're innately curious growing up, and that curiosity is either stifled as we go through life and life experiences, right? We get jaded by different things. And so we need to find, even as adults, ways to remain curious, ways to continue to innovate within ourselves. And so I think curiosity is a big thing that fuels me, and I think that's a common theme that we all share.
Right on.
And so, and kind of in line with that, because obviously we're all here for space and future of space and everything, and we're kind of talking about the industry, and we talk about the future of space. Now I had some conversations with people talking about how space is almost kind of like the ultimate startup, right? We're here creating new job titles, right? Creating new positions. New companies are popping up every single day because we're making new discoveries all the time. How can the space industry better help inspire the next generation? And also just in preparation for jobs, how can they better prepare them for all the unique possibilities that are going to be out there?
So I'll start. So I think in the work that I've been doing on this particular, exactly to that, is like, I think the inspiration part is kind of easy, right? And I think people understand that space is unique, but it's also everywhere. And so it unites us, and it's really easy to look up into the sky and see, you know, all sorts of things and wonder. I think that the important part for me about that is preparation. And so, as I mentioned, I'm back in the administration, in the Office of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, leading an effort that we call Space STEM, that is focused on using space to inspire, right, but also on the preparation and on the workforce. And so we're kind of doing this from start to end. But I think that preparation piece is really important because it's, you know, one thing to be inspired, but you actually have to know how to do something, right? You have to have those experiences. You have to have the coursework, the knowledge, the technical skills and ability in order to have, you know, be on the path, right, and be into the workforce. And so I think that is where I personally want to double down. And so we've been doing this work because of, in our partnership with NASA and the National Space Council, in response to the Vice President's tasking of us. So she's the chair of the Space Council, and at their first meeting, she asked us to use space as an exciting lens to inspire, which I think is, you know, pretty clear, but then also to identify and reduce the barriers, right, to entering and staying in the space workforce. And that is much harder to do, because there are a lot of barriers and not everyone has the same opportunities. And that is where I think this community has an opportunity to really double down on ensuring that access to your research projects, to your research labs, to your classrooms, to your institutions, to your organizations and companies, right, is equitable. And that you're looking across the nation at people from all institutions, right, and all backgrounds have the opportunity to be in those places and to do the amazing, exciting work that you all do.
Wow, Quincy, that resonates so much with me, what you're saying right there. You know what I love about some of these experiences that I see offered here, like the Genes in Space program is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
You basically identify and find that top talent that was hiding somewhere. But it's the mentor. You know, we talk about influencers today, but mentors and advisors, those are the influencers, and they're quiet. We don't really see them. They don't talk to 5 million people. They might just talk to 2 or 3. But that opportunity to get there at the top. But not everyone has the mentors or the influencers, right? So they might have to go to media. But what I like and what I'm trying to do, and I think the whole industry, all industries can do, is think about that broad base. What can we do to establish that broad base where student, doesn't matter where they came from, doesn't matter their background, maybe they might have an incarcerated parent or a working family that's just overwhelmed. The last couple of years has been horrendous for humanity, from every walk of life. If we can build that broad base, right, as we get to the moon again, the Artemis generation, wow, that's going to be so cool to watch that, and to inspire those folks that we didn't expect to know. Someone shared something with me the other night, just last night, and it kind of blew me away, in talking about placement of prisons. And I don't want to get too dystopic, but the way they were identifying the placement of the prison was looking for the lowest 3rd grade test scores, and that's where they were going to drop the prison. I'm like, hold on a second, stop the press. So I think fundamentally, as a society, we need to be thinking about the equity and how might we include the diversity of all voices and build that base. And as an artist, what's nice is I have a very high level of naivety, and my ignorance is well on display. But being curious, being able to ask those questions, and finding super smart people that can actually explain it to you in terms of, okay, I'm going to take some notes. You know, there's a 12-year-old here inside, and being able to unlock that, I think, to be able to have that growth mindset. If we can teach the young people that, give them agency, where they now understand how to learn on their own.
Yeah.
How fast can we get out of the way, right? This next generation has stuff we can't even imagine right now. We have the way we're doing it, the way we inherit doing it, and the sooner we can get out of the way, the better I think this plan's going to be. But I'm so excited to hear you say that and think about those opportunities.
Yeah. And you practice that a lot too, right? In your science communication work, utilizing these tools that we need to take better advantage of when it comes to social media, right? And finding ways to be able to even bring that to the classroom. And I know we talked about that before as well too when we had our previous call was, you know, how can we now meet students where they're at?
Yes.
And social media is a great tool to be able to do that. So what ways are you kind of leveraging that to help inspire the future generations?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think really it touches on things that all of you have mentioned, especially about giving students those skills that we all know that they're already excited about science.
Yep.
It's giving them the support and the resources and the mentorship and that ability to ask questions that I think is so important. And so part of what I do, honestly, is just try and model that. I think for so long, science communication from organizations, from education, has been very, I know the answers, you don't, and I'm going to just tell them to you.
Yeah.
And I think that that's not how any of us actually do science. We do science by not knowing. We do science by asking questions. And so one of the things that I really try and both model is saying, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, but here's how I'm going to try and find out. Here's how I'm going to learn how to ask those questions. Because I think those are really some of the skills we need to be giving to those students is science is not memorizing facts. We all know that, but I think it's so often taught that way that showing them what a scientist is, showing them scientists don't know everything, and that's the point. That's why we're in science, is we're here to ask those questions and giving them the resources and opportunity to do that themselves through something like Magnitude, through something like Genes in Space, through just their own ability to Google things, right, and to figure out what's a good resource, I think is so important to tell them, we already know that you're excited about this.
Yeah.
How do we support you in doing that versus you don't need inspiration from us. You need support, you need mentorship, you need question asking. So I try and model that and also, you know, support whatever resources I can to say, and if you have a good question, go to Magnitude, go to Genes in Space, go to one of these places where you can get those then physical hands-on resources, which are of course hard to get in school budgets are small. It is hard to sometimes get access to those, and that's not something that I personally know how to tackle, though people in the room do. But I think pointing them, yeah, exactly. Like, I think somebody on this panel might know how to tackle that. And so sending students your way, sending students towards your resources, I think also something we can be doing with social media of saying, they're here, help us, or let us help you find them. Let us help you get to those opportunities.
Yeah, and that kind of translates to two questions for you, Dr. Epps and Dr. Brown. Talking about inspiration. Obviously, you grow up wanting to be astronauts, right? You talk to students, and that's kind of the first thing they think about when you think about space and space exploration. It's like, oh, an astronaut, right? And you bring so many different things to the table with your unique background. You have patents under your belt, all these different things, right? And you think about kind of opening the doors for this pipeline and showcasing representation in these fields. What does that mean to you to be now in the position that you're in and having such a unique background to get to where you got to help kind of establish that pipeline for future generations?
Well, I love everything that the panel has said about inspiring and opportunities for students. And so inspiration for me as a kid was learning something new. And if it's something cool that I could go find something else out about it and go, but kids are different these days. And so I think for me, my background is a little strange and different. And a lot of kids don't think that that's the thing that they have an opportunity to do. And so for me, I've realized that students just need opportunities to see, touch, figure out what it is that they like and that they want to do. And so I think that's how they become inspired. You know, seeing someone underwater in Nemo may not be something that's inspiring to them. Show them something else. Maybe hanging out in the cave is something they want to do. Maybe going in a lab and working on genetics and figuring out what a PCR is and figuring out maybe that's what inspires them. But you know, our schools on a basic level in underserved communities and things like that, a lot of students do not think that any of this is an option for them. So showing them that through social media, through different ways, through programs at the White House, and getting to these schools that are very underserved where the students don't think they have any options. So they may end up in one of these prisons, they may sell drugs, they may do this, but showing them that there are other options out there and there's different ways to pay for it. I'm one of 7 kids. My mom had no clue how she was going to make our dreams come true.
Oh, she made it
but
work, though.
well, through scholarships and things like that, there are opportunities out there. And a lot of kids do not believe that this is something for them. And encouraging them and changing the culture of certain schools and places that, hey, this is a part of your culture to go on to be involved in STEM. You may not continue in a career in that, but you're better off for knowing a lot more about STEM. You're just more analytical, you think more broadly, you think more inclusively too. So making things a part of our culture, getting to the schools, giving them opportunities to be involved in different things. They may or may not take it up, but that 1 or 2 student that you get, that's like everything. Yeah. So, for me, inspiring students and all the ways that you guys have talked about, getting to the students on the lowest level, giving them opportunities, making sure they know that all of this is an opportunity for them, and then teaching them that the culture is that this is what we do, this is our culture, to be involved in science. But this is also how you give back to your community, to your country as well, by being an active participant and contributor to your society.
Yeah.
So it's all one thing to me. It's the one big, it's all different parts to making the society and culture and community better.
Yeah. And our keynote speaker the other day brought up a really interesting story about the STEM lab, right? And how she incorporated the STEM lab and had students coming back and thanking her because that opened up so many doors. And it got me thinking, having some conversations with some educators over the past couple of days of this accessibility for things, right? And we have Zero Robotics and Hunch Program and all these different things that are providing after school opportunities for students. But you think something as basic as a STEM lab isn't affordable to everybody. Some schools know about it and maybe they don't have the funding. Some schools don't even know that that's an opportunity or that's something that should be in the schools, right? I'm a firm believer that every school should have some sort of STEM lab, science lab, should be teaching some area of finance. I believe those are kind of fundamental things that we should all be having from an early age. You have an opportunity to really enact policy in the work that you do. What do you kind of see what we're doing well right now when it comes to STEM education and outreach, and what areas we really need to improve on?
So I'm going to stay away from the super wonky policy stuff. But I do think, we have done well as a nation for very many people, right? The challenge is we haven't done well for everyone. And so I think, some of what we've been working on is focused on not just explaining that, space is more than just for space sake. It's more than being about space exploration. And so I like to say it's also space for Earth. And that there are things that are, space direct, but there are lots of things here that are space enabled, and that it's about, your community, right? It's about your health, it's about your culture, and making people understand that, especially young people. I think we don't do a good job of anyone to say like, oh, well, you're great in math. We assume that then they know, that is going to lead them to being able to be an astronaut. Like, how do people know? I've met you, I've met a few other astronauts, I still have no idea how to be an astronaut, right? And so I think it's, right, and to your point, to your point though, there's not one path, right? Everyone has a different path, and I don't think we're transparent enough about what that looks like so that people can see their place in, I was gonna say in space, but people can see their place in that. Because it's not clear. We don't talk about the things that haven't been successful, right? So I'm typically transparent to say, yeah, I wasn't a great student in high school, right? People assume that everyone in this room, because we're in this room, got A's in every class we've ever taken. Right? And I'm not going to call anyone else out, right? But that's absolutely not true. But I think this notion that you have to do this by yourself, and that using resources you find online, getting help from people in your community, in your family or not in your family, is like somehow abnormal and wrong. I think there's some messaging in the narrative around how you go about being, and also I should say, what successful means, right? Because it may not be that you are an astronaut. You may not even have that aspiration, right? You may really want to care, you may be interested in climate change, right? And so using all of the data that's generated, in space, right, for the things that you care about, and for whatever someone's passions are, I think is where we're trying to take the work and, you know, bring more people into the community so they can understand how to use space for the things that they are passionate about, if space in and of itself is not necessarily their passion.
Oh, Quincy, wow. You know, I'm hoping this is the start of a conversation, really.
Yeah.
And beyond this stage here for an hour or whatever, we definitely got to be talking
Absolutely.
here. You know, space is an absolute wonder, and I think it's being able to look back at what we have. I mean, you look at the moon, and you look at Venus. Oh, you really want to go to Venus? You know, the high pressure and the sulfur clouds. And you look at Mars, kind of far away, kind of cold, you know, inverse square law, whatever. And you look at this beautiful blue ball we have. It's like, really, all right, well, let's put our science on that. And ocean, getting down in the Nemo, it's like that whole world we really still don't understand. So exploration and discovery, that curiosity, can be triggered by any child anywhere if we just give them that opportunity. We just open it up.
And kids are curious, right?
They
They're
are.
really
I think that's, what was this thing you said earlier with curiosity?
Yeah, curiosity
This is
is
nature's way of,
PhD.
nature's PhD. So, all right, I'm going to.
Kids are all over the place. They're looking at I mean, if anyone, right, like we've all been kids, but like they are naturally curious, right? And I am fascinated by what happens on TikTok. I can't figure it out.
I have to be very careful about that.
Yeah, I mean, but like they're people younger than, well, and not just always younger than me, but people are able to do things and communicate in ways, right, and share information about these concepts and translate all of this very heavy, weighty stuff, right, into very simple, clear language and videos, and they're dancing, and it's like I am hats off to all of you, because I think this is really an opportunity for everyone to bring all of their skills and passions together, because I can't do what you do, right? Like I can't even post on Instagram. I just don't know how to do it.
And there's a lot of negative stereotypes around that. We don't all want to be TikTok influencers, okay? But we are able to utilize these tools for the better good, right? We're able to bring unique STEM education to these platforms. And we both are in that same space in the SciComm work, being able to educate and inspire others. And you talk about students and kids in general being curious. They're on these platforms, they're utilizing these, right? So being able to add science to and technology, engineering, math into that kind of entertainment world as well too, through these tools, becomes an added value. So now they're not just blindly watching something for hours and just being and laughing. Now they're getting educated. They're meeting people that are doing work in these fields and showcasing their studies and different things that they're learning. What does that really mean to you now to be able to be on those platforms and to be able to now, we having this conversation here, be able to now expand that to further outreach?
Yeah, I think it's all about being really honest and frank with yourself about what skills you have and how you can use those skills to help lift everyone else up with you. So I don't have the dance skills of TikTok. That's not part of what I have.
Well, we haven't seen it yet.
No, I don't dance on TikTok. But I do feel like I have a skill of communication and that I can take those, larger concepts and I can break them down and I can put them on those platforms where students are now. But I would say to everyone in this room, we have all had some kind of opportunities in our careers that have helped us get to where we are, and we all have some kind of skills and resources now. I think it's on each and every one of us to say, okay, well, what is that skill that I have? What is that resource I have now? Not everyone is going to be an educator. Not everyone is going to be part of science outreach, but I think just by virtue of being in this room, being a part of these companies, being part of these organizations, we have access to things that, students don't have access to. How can we open up our labs to them? How can we open up our mentorship to them? If you are a communicator, how do you communicate what is out there to them? I think it is important that we're all in this room because we've had some of those opportunities. It is on us to open those opportunities up to other people in whatever ways that we can. And so mine happens to be social media. Not everyone in this room needs to be on social media, but I think that's the way that I have found to best connect with people, to best open up these conversations. And so I try and utilize that for those purposes. My goal is not to get 100 million followers and to get the best dance video or whatever that is. It's really to have these conversations with people and to say, okay, this is how I got here. This is why I love science. This is why this scientist that I'm talking to loves science. What part of this can be useful to you, can you use in your life, and can I give to you in this 60-second video? And so that's what I can do. And that's not, going to be everyone's skill set, but I think we all have to take a deep and honest look at what we can do and pay it back to the next generation.
Yeah, exactly. And we're in the SciComm space, but in general, all of us here are all science communicators because it's viable for us to be able to present what we do in our professional fields to the public. And you mentioned, right, you still don't know what it takes to be a NASA astronaut. If you think about that, fundamentally, that's a problem, right? For people that we should be able to see that path. We should be able to envision ourselves in those positions. And we had a conversation when we were doing our chat a couple of days ago about literacy. And that's part of it, right? Is how do we expand now the work that we're doing to make the general population more literate, especially when it comes to the space industry and the different things that are happening right now. How can we better improve that literacy, whether it's through outreach work, changing policies? What steps can we take?
Let me jump in on that for sure. I mean, I guess we really have to address the pandemic, right? And fundamentally, I think the societal structure of what's the future of work, right? I mean, how many of you are working from home, still work from home, corporation making you come in the office, what have you? Next generation, do they really want to do that? What's the future of work? But also, probably more importantly to us here on the panel, for the world, what's the future of learning, right? And the pandemic was kind of like this big tsunami that hit, all in kind of slow motion, and it's just now receding, and that detritus, what's being left over, you know what, honestly, that was always there. We're just seeing it much more evidently now. There is a report that just came out at the end of June from the World Bank, UNESCO, and UNICEF, and it was disturbing to me, but at the same time, they were quantifying this, and it was called Learning Poverty. Anyone wants the report, I'll be more than happy to forward, or you can probably find it online, World Bank, UNESCO. And what they are doing is they're looking at literacy as a litmus for an institution's ability to teach. So if the students by the age of 10, and of course here in the US it's a little younger, but by the age of 10 couldn't read a book that was age appropriate, comprehend it, and be able to communicate that, then we had this, they were illiterate. And in some parts of sub-Saharan Africa, they're getting close to 90%, unable to read at that age. And so this litmus test was basically saying, if they can't read in this institution, then it's going to be unlikely they're going to be able to do mathematics. It's unlikely they're going to really be able to convey the history or the sciences or anything else really, or even the arts, right? Being able to kind of work together. And so to me, that was really pretty interesting. Now in the United States, we're a little better off, but there are some parts of our country that are north of 50% illiterate by third grade. And the pandemic has only exacerbated that. And so while we think about all the cool things we want to be able to do next, we also have to kind of reflect and look back at what we've got that we've got to deal with right now. And, you know, our federal government has been really great. They've dumped $122.7 billion across 3 different tranches to the states under the ESSER funding. You can speak much more than I can about this. And I think our states have invested about 30% of that. But a lot of that is the short-term thinking about what's going to happen this year. And honestly, they're just trying to keep the teachers in the classroom. We're going to have a teacher shortage. You can speak about this much more than I can. And we're going to have a real challenge in the next couple of years. And so, you know, like a tree, if you were looking at those tree rings, we've had a drought, right? It's a sustained drought. You can't just start dumping nutrients and water on this thing expecting you're going to bear fruit. You're going to have to take the time and get those bands to get a little wider. But it's going to take all of us, not just here in space or in the sciences, but just as a society to take the time, kind of like musical instruments need to tune up before they can play something that's nice to listen to. We're going to need to tune up our instruments before we can really start going and let the music playing. So let's make sure that we fundamentally address what's really happening right now and how we're going to take care of our frontline workers like healthcare workers, like our educators. Without our educators, really, where would society be? I think we dumped a lot. I mean, they're social service workers, they're everything. They're a second mom or dad. And so we need to do a lot, but yet we're very ambitious. All of us really want to take us to the moon. They want to take us to Mars. And we will get there. But let's bring everyone along in that journey. How can we do that? And me, that's an open-ended question. Everyone's got some ideas. Let's get those solved. I mean, I'd love to figure that out.
Yeah, I would love to hear both of your thoughts too on the literacy, because you're in both aspects, you're focusing on that. In your work constantly with NASA as an astronaut, being able to expose others to this incredible work, why we're doing this research work that we're doing, and then your work, Dr. Brown, in policy, right? Being able to now enable others in your outreach work and working with different organizations to make us more literate in STEM in general, but specifically when it comes down to space. What are different tools that we can utilize, different platforms that we can support to help expand our literacy?
Well, I'll start, just because, you know, I think that I've been privileged to wear a blue flight suit and be able to go into schools. And one of the things that has surprised me is that some of the schools that I go to, the kids, they're like, why are you wearing that? What does it mean? And they're not exposed to things like that. So for me, SciComm is very important to try to draw on those students. You know, some students think, well, I can't do that. And I'm like, well, no, I started where you were. And getting to those schools where the students are illiterate to a certain extent, and trying to work with teachers there and try to figure out how did this happen. Mm-hmm. And so that is a problem that I've seen it here in DC, I've seen it in Houston, where you do have schools where kids can't read age-appropriate books. Yeah. And trying to figure out, okay, how did that happen? How can I help that? How can I work with these teachers to stop that and get students inspired to want to, like, okay, I gotta learn. So to me, it seems that there's something either going on in the home, there's something going on at school. Why aren't they curious enough to want to learn to read? So, it goes back to kids are super curious. And so maintaining this childlikeness, not childish, but childlikeness is very important. And when you see kids who don't have it, there's something wrong. Mm-hmm. So you're right, there's other issues that we have to fix before students can hear the SciComm. I mean, if they have all these other things going on, they're never going to hear any of this. So it doesn't matter how many opportunities you give them, they can't even get to that. So in my position, I do try with limited time that I have to go to some of these schools and at least talk to students and, even working with local churches and things like that and try to get to these students. Very difficult, very, very difficult, only because you have to solve other problems before you can get them to hear you. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, seeing me kind of can make the situation worse because they're like, well, why would you show me this? This isn't for me. I don't, I can't do this. I don't. So, I try to work with the students that I can, but also try to figure out, how can you help? What is it that they're lacking? What is it that they're missing? And, this goes back to sort of policy and what you guys do. How do you inspire those kids to want to at least get to the level where they want to learn to read? They're in like some kind of tutorial to learn to read and then go beyond that. So once you get all these other problems solved, getting them to hear and see these different things that are going on is easier. It's a difficult task.
Oh man, can I make a plug?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Space Station Explorers is part of the U.S. National Laboratory, and there's several dozen organizations like Teens in Space, like what we do. There's a wonderful program called Story Time in Space, where the astronauts read stories while they're floating around up there. So when you get up there, will you read a story? That'd be great. And they have a wonderful program, and of course it's all recorded. But talk about inspiring, right? And I think you can never do harm by going there, honestly. It's all upside. And being able to see that is going to inspire you. Wow, they're reading. And how can I read? Not every child has the opportunity for a parent to read them a bedtime story. Or just sit down on a Saturday afternoon and go through the book together there on the cozy couch. And so if we can find ways to even volunteer a little time at the local library. When's the last time any of you have been in a local library, right? What do you need the library for anymore? What's the Dewey Decimal System? I mean, come on, right? But I think libraries are trying to reinvent themselves. That's an institution that we can probably think about. We put a lot of burden on our public education system, but we have a lot of amazing informal opportunities at the science centers, at the libraries, at the museums that we can activate as well. And the students that you see advancing, they had support. They had, whether they were peers, they were running together, and they were really trying to achieve together. I've seen some of those kids this week. That you're a junior in high school, and can you explain that to me again? Well, most of them do that, but it's really amazing. So there's usually some kind of support group. And we just need collectively, when you go back to your hometown, wherever you are, what kind of thing can you do? And it's not going to take you 20 hours of the week. It might just take you 2 or 3. Or maybe you work together with some folks in a community and you do something. But that volunteerism, I think the tragedy we have right now, especially maybe the isolation of the pandemic, has made it really like a tragedy of the commons, where I'm not going to deal with that right now, let someone else deal with it. And then you get the road rage, and you get this other stuff like this, you get the violence. And I think because we forgot to care that we all have the same thing that we need to share. This planet, if you want to get that big about it. But Yeah, I think I just want to make that plug about story time in
I love
space
it.
and the literacy, because I think when the kids see that, when I've been in a library and you set them down for that, and you don't want to just set some kind of media up and walk away, but you can see that they're just like, they're like ready to go. And if they have the book in front of them, then they're reading the words too. It's really amazing to see that transformation. Yeah. And then they'll pick up a book and they'll take it out of the library, which is really great. So.
And I'll just say, I think a lot of what both of you mentioned are structural, right? There are these children at the age of 3, 4, 5, 6. They didn't create the world that they were born into, right? And so I think that, thinking of using an ecosystems approach, right? As everyone goes back home, they are part of an ecosystem. They work for, an institution or an organization, or they have a local museum, science center, library in their community, and there is something each of us can do. It may not be that we can, go into space and read stories, but you could read stories to young people in the classroom at wherever school you are, right? You can make opportunities in your labs if that's where you are and that's where you're passionate about. When I was a professor, I loved providing opportunities for freshmen, right? So a lot of people think freshmen, they haven't learned enough, they haven't taken enough courses in order to be able to do the research. But I'd see freshmen in classes, and some of them were not necessarily getting the GPA that we think was required for them to be able to do research. And I'd say, hey, what are you doing this summer? And I live in Maryland, and sometimes they'd say, oh, I'm working at the grocery store, or I'll be at Six Flags. And I'm like, I'm going to provide you, you can earn the same amount of money in my lab, and I'll find something meaningful for you to do as a freshman. And those are the kind of things that I think we all can do, right? We all have access to some opportunity and some path that we could make more explicit, more visible, more accessible to people in our communities. And I think that's the all hands on deck, right? We have different gifts and different things we can offer, but we all have to do something, because especially these last few years, right? It wasn't great for everyone, and some people were able to maintain, but too many fell even further behind. And time is moving on for those people as we're figuring it all out. Those young people are still growing up, right? And there's still support that's needed, comprehensively, right? And it's way more than what the federal government can offer. It does take state, local government, community governments, families, parents, churches, you mentioned, right? Religious organizations. All of it has to come together really with a focus on how we're preparing young people. In part because there are, these people in kindergarten today, they're going to be doing work when they're our ages that we can't even imagine. Right? They have to be prepared now to do that. And so how are we coming together to make sure that we're equipping them today for things that we can't even envision?
Yeah, absolutely. And just kind of final point of discussion before we wrap up here, I think about exciting moments and things happening in space exploration. You talked about what motivated you, back early on with the initial space launches, right? And we're now at this new frontier of science, and especially when it comes to space exploration, you think of things about James Webb Space Telescope and all the energy and excitement that's been around it. I was here 2 weeks ago for the reveal at Goddard, and I remember I was in my lift, and the driver was like, hey, have you heard about this new telescope that can look back in time? And I was like, yeah, I'm actually about to go check it out right now. And just, you got to see this commonality within people that aren't in the space industry, having this excitement and sharing this love and this passion for this new technology. As we think about call to actions, about what everybody here can do, whether it's you working with your corporation, working with any platforms, working as a mentor, doing outreach work yourselves, how can we now continue to fuel that energy and inspire others in the individual positions that we're at, and also finding platforms that we can support, whether it's through the social media tools, whether it's through working with classrooms, supporting different programs, enacting policies, different call to actions that we can do to continue to inspire and really kind of help that next generation get more excited about opportunities when it comes to specifically space exploration.
Yeah, I'll start off with just the fact that the reason I'm in this room, the way that I got involved with the sort of space industry is because I was just driving in my car and I heard a little NPR story that said that, NASA had just sequenced DNA in space. And I thought, wait, what? They're doing what now? I had no idea. 5 or 6 years ago that biology happened in space. I thought it was just physics. I thought it was just math kind of thing. But hearing that little story then led me to try and get in touch with NASA. And I got in touch with Kate Rubins and we talked about DNA sequencing. And it just led me on this whole path. And I think it was because there was that one little hint of communication that got me excited and that made me realize that, oh, this is for me. I don't think that I'm a space person, but space is still for me. So I think that that's what we all need to do, is talk really honestly and earnestly about why we're all here. What is the thing that made you really excited about space? What got you interested in it? What got you interested in science? And tell people about that. Tell people about what you're working on. You know, you mentioned this before, you don't need to be a professional communicator to do this, but you do need to be able to communicate the science that you're doing, both to your peers and to people in the public. So I think just being honest and open about the things that you love and are excited about can go farther than you can imagine.
Well, there you go. It's looking at the other end of the spectrum, at the end of the education pipeline, if you will, are university students, right? Those that have decided they're going to go into chemistry or biology or engineering, mechanical, electrical, computer science, what have you. These young people have also been challenged with the pandemic, and a lot of them are uncertain about where they might want to go. And I think many don't understand the opportunities that space provides. And part of that, you know, from the National Laboratory's perspective, you know, the three elements that we always talk about, the Earth observation. Well, you know, a lot of satellites can do that, but it's pretty neat to be able to put that on the station. If anything, you can get your equipment back and iterate on it. You've got the extreme nature of being in LEO. You're still within those Van Allen belts, right? So you're still kind of a little safer, but still, obviously, you get more radiation. But it's that idea that you're taking gravity out of everything you thought of before. So when you talk to that kid that's just focused on their chemistry thing or their one bug, they want to know why that bug in the Amazon's doing that thing. And you come to them and go, let's go to space. They're going to look at you like, well, I'm doing this thing in the Amazon. I don't need to go to space. But if you say, what happens if that bug didn't have any gravity? Then they're like, what? And then suddenly we got them hooked. They're coming in here and they're going to do research. They're going to be flying something in a cube lab in 2025. So I think if we reframe it and really think about where they're coming from, we have an opportunity to transcend and really keep our leadership position here in the United States and really help the world be a better place. So that's me coming on looking at the other side as well. Again, without not a lot of knowledge or I guess certificates that say I'm capable of doing that. It's just a dad talking about what I think is going to kind of happen. But.
Well, I mean, like I said, I've been privileged to wear a blue flight suit, and you can go out and talk to anyone. But even when I'm not doing this, I think doing what you guys do, just trying to talk to students individually and making yourself available to them, and getting calls from students or emails from students is always welcome for me in general, because that's the student I want to help because they're already helping themselves. But I also realize that I have to try to draw in those students who are willing to help themselves. And then how do you engage them and get them to be curious? But I think you're right, and talking to students and introducing this idea of, well, what if you did that in space? They'll start talking like, well, but there's no gravity, so what do you do? And then they start thinking, I think that is when the light bulb goes on of why we want to do this, and discovering the true nature of something. When you take away gravity, you get the real nature of, like water, the real nature, it has a lot of surface tension. When you just take away one force, boom. And so when you can engage students on a one-on-one or like in a crowd like this, or just making yourself available, they see you on the internet, they see you on TikTok or Instagram, and allowing them to like send you a direct message and ask you a question and trying to get back to them in a timely fashion. That's been the way that I've been doing it. And I do think that also, you know, like I said, churches and other things like that, there's just so much work to do. And I think everybody kind of contributing is this what it's going to take.
So I'll end with, you know, the areas we focus on. I mentioned inspire, prepare, and employ. I think using space to inspire, and not just about, you know, space for space, but also space for Earth, and making those careers clear, right? The paths for those careers clear. Understanding what you can do to prepare students, right? Finding those paid work-based learning experiences in your companies, in your organizations, in your labs. I think that is really important. And then how can we create equitable and inclusive work environments so that when people do enter the workforce, they stay, right? And they have careers that allow them to thrive and not just kind of survive.
Awesome. Well, that is all the time that we have. We could be here for hours talking about this and engaging, and I'm glad that we ended it with call to action so that everybody kind of knows what steps you can take in our own individual platforms. We're working to continue to spread this outreach work and help inspire the next generation. So thank you all for all your input, your advice, your passion, your purpose, what you bring to the table, continue to spark that curiosity, and excited for the future. All right?
Thank you, man.
So that's all we got. So give it a round of applause for our esteemed panel.
You guys. We make our way up, I guess.
Thank you. So we're going to continue on to our next steps here. We would like to honor, I'm going to stay right here with me, all right? We'd like to honor some phenomenal educators who have joined us today from across the country and represent all of the phenomenal space station ambassadors. These awards will be presented by our esteemed panelist, Dr. Jeanette Epps. I think you have everything you need for preparation, right? All right, it's all you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Maynard. I really appreciate that. And thanks for the interview. That was a lot of fun, by the way. So I'm going to present some awards. So first, I'd like to say it's my pleasure to recognize these incredible educators in their efforts to reach, teach, and inspire the next generation. Educators are the ones who work tirelessly to breathe life into lesson plans and strive to make space education engaging and accessible. As such, the ISS National Lab STEM education team would like to congratulate 3 educators who have been selected to receive awards based on the utilization of their space education resources. These individuals have demonstrated excellence in their efforts to engage students and help other educators bring ISS-related activities into their classrooms. As such, we are honoring these three educators with the Space Station Explorer Exceptional Educator Award. That's a lot. And for the first time ever, the Tony So Excellence in Education Award. These Space Station Explorers Exceptional Education Award, the Space Station Exceptional Educator Award recognizes educators who have done outstanding work using ISS-related programs to engage students in STEM subjects and careers. This year's recipients were chosen from over 2,000 space station ambassadors. Space Station Explorers partners help the ISS National Lab identify exceptional educators and are nominated based on the following criteria. First, reaching underserved populations, creatively relating ISS resources to lessons, utilization of Space Station Explorer programs, and service to their communities. This is an annual award, but due to the pandemic, we were unable to recognize a recipient last year. Therefore, we would like to recognize both Becky Busby and Mary Vaughn as our newest Exceptional Educator Award winners. So Becky Busby has been teaching for 24 years and is a gifted resource teacher at Frank Long Elementary. Becky is being honored for outstanding utilization of our programs, both inside and outside the classroom, and her dedication to her students. Becky's devotion to her students, her creativity when presenting lessons, and her relentless efforts to engage and inspire her students caused her application to stand out from the crowd. Congratulations, Becky. It's a pleasure to meet you. Okay, stand here. We'll let that roll off. So next, Mary Vaughn. Mary Vaughn is a 6th grade Earth and Space Science educator at Randall Middle School in Hillsborough County, Florida. Mary was selected for exemplary involvement in Space Station Explorers programs like Magnitude IO and Student Spaceflight Experiments program. Mary has been teaching for 33 years and continues to inspire her students and fellow educators every day. Congratulations, Mary. So earlier this year, we lost a dear friend and educational partner, Tony So. He was not only the co-founder of Magnitude.io, but also a passionate educator whose kindness, thoughtfulness, and intelligence permeated every interaction he had with others. Tony's impact continues to be a source of inspiration to all who knew him. So to help present this award, I would like to welcome back to stage Tony's friend and business partner at Magnitude.io, Ted Tagami. Thank you, Ted. Thanks. So Lauren Parker has been teaching for 15 years. Lauren is a middle school science teacher who has inspired her students to reach for the stars by igniting their creativity and encouraging them to participate in STEM activities. Using Space Station Explorer's programming, she helps her students gain knowledge and confidence by contributing to real science being carried out on the space station. For these achievements, we are proud to honor her as the first ever recipient of the Tony So Excellence in Education Award. When asked what this award means to her, Parker stated, "I am beyond honored to be the first recipient of this award for a man with contagious curiosity and enthusiasm. It was a privilege to work with Tony on Exolab missions. He is greatly missed, but I am better for having known him and his passion for inspiring students. I strive to continue his legacy with my students and colleagues." Congratulations, Lauren Parker.
All right. Inspiration, opportunity, curiosity. Just such a great talk. That was very cool. So right now we're going to take our break for lunch. We're going to kick things back off at 12:50 with our keynote luncheon speaker, Mike L.A., commander of the first all-private crew to the ISS, as well as some additional special awards. So please let me inspire you now to get up and get out. We have to turn this over for lunch and come back in at 12:50. Thank you very much.